Hey all, just thought I'd put this video on here. It's Remembrance Day today, obviously, so I'd like to remind you all to pause for a moment and just keep in mind those that have suffered and died for our country while serving in the armed forces of this country. I'd also like you to stop and think about those of us who suffer from injury, illnesses, mental conditions that affect our daily lives that are a result of our service and the operations that we've seen, the deployments that we've been on. I've put together a little bit of a video today from the service up in Toowoomba in Queensland. And so this is the service from Toowoomba on the 11th of November 2020, the Remembrance Day service.
Bugler, sound the alert. Ladies and gentlemen, if you are able, will you please stand as I sing the royal hymn, God Save the Queen. I'll ask you to remain standing, ladies and gentlemen, as the catapult party from 73 Squadron 7 Single Regiment mounts the vigil at the memorial this morning. March on the vigil. Vigil party, by the right, slow. You may stand at ease and be seated, ladies and gentlemen. 2020 also recognises the 75th anniversary of the end of World War II. We must also remember the sacrifices made by the men and women of the peacemaking and peacekeeping duties in Somalia, Bougainville, East Timor, Afghanistan, Iraq, Persian Gulf, and on United Nations commitments. We'll commence our service this morning with the laying of the wreaths, and that will be led by Councillor Paul Antonio, Mayor Toowoomba Region. Toowoomba United RSL Sub-Branch by Deputy President Mr Sheldon Rogers, and the Harleston RSL Sub-Branch by President Mr Terry Brown. Western District Women's Auxiliary Council by Secretary Mrs Rhonda James, and the Australian War Widows by Darling Downs President Mrs Helen Strain. Now, in memory of the late husband, Flying Officer Bridget Maskell, and her brother Tom Theodosu, Mrs. Irene Maskell, OAM, and she'll be joined by Mrs. John Gillen, Mrs. Jennifer Gillen, in memory of Warrant Officer Class 2 John Gillen, OAM.
Help us to remember those who still bear the physical and mental scars and disabilities of their service. Help us to remember the widows, girlfriends, parents and orphans of all those who waited in vain for the return of a loved one. Help us to remember the mateship, agony, courage and compassion of war. But save us from ever glorifying the horror and tragedy of war. Lord God, help us to remember. Amen.
During my service in this great country, I was employed in the Royal Australian Infantry Corps, including operations abroad in Somalia, Bougainville, East Timor, Afghanistan twice, and Iraq, working with special operations groups domestically in Australia and abroad for more than 6 years. Today, I wish to speak to you about peacekeeping missions and highlight some of the misnomers regarding them. My first deployment was for 5 months in Somalia, Operational Solace. In 1993 as a private soldier within support company of the 1st Battalion Group. Op Solace was the Australian Defence Force's main contribution to the Unified Task Force, which was a USA-led, United Nations sanctioned multinational force which operated in the Republic of Somalia. Somalia endured war with Ethiopia, followed by civil war and over 20 years of war between clan-based militia that led to a country with chronic levels of refugees, famine and enormous numbers of internally displaced people, with widespread lawlessness and little to no public services or infrastructure. It was simply survival of the fittest. The 1st Battalion Royal Australian Regiment was deployed to the town of Baidoa, about 240 kilometres southwest of Mogadishu, the capital of Somalia. Banditry and warlord intimidation was rife, with the area being known as the City of Death. Our mandate was to provide security. This included both conventional operations and low-level operations. By the time we had finished our 5 months in country, we had achieved high accolades from the US, likening us to termites. There was a system of infrastructure, security forces were established, and markets had reappeared. Things had improved considerably over our time. I would like to use this opportunity to further update some people regarding the term peacekeeping. Whilst I served under the banner on 3 occasions and on many other occasions in a conventional war role, in the regular army and in special forces operations, the job did not change. In fact, some of my deployments whilst under the banner peacekeeping had more risk and potential for more adverse outcome than operations in a war zone. Unfortunately, the banner peacekeeping has put a lesser slant on some deployments, making it harder for veterans to be acknowledged and categorising them into a position where there is less access for them to gain assistance for service-related injuries. As a note, those members who deployed to Somalia did so separate to any UN charter or any campaign. Today, I wear a single clasp on my Australian Active Service Medal, the only symbol of my tour that means more to me and my fellow Somalian veterans than anything else, although the tour was considered warlike. These concerns were put to a tribunal of honours and awards that failed to change any outcome. The result was put to us that Somalia was too insignificant for that kind of recognition. I would like to remember today Lance Corporal Shannon McElhaney from Wanara, who died while serving on operations in Somalia on the 2nd of April 1993. You are not insignificant to us, lest we forget. To my fellow veterans, thank you for your service. Thank you all for attending today. Please stay safe and well. All the very best. Thank you.
Thank you all for watching. My sign-off that I've been doing on these vlogs means a little bit more to me today because it's our regimental motto and it was a creed we all lived our lives by. We put our duty first. Before our families, before anything like that, our duty was to our mates, our brothers and our unit and to the country. So thank you very much for watching. I appreciate all the views, I appreciate the comments, and I appreciate my subscribers. And remember, as always, duty first.